Hi there! In today's video, I'm going to integrate my PHP ChatGPT function calling API client library into this chat application, which I have created with my GPT Autopilot AI agent. So currently the way this works now is that we can write here a message, hello, and it will be added to the list and we get an automatic message from an assistant. Now this is just a hard-coded message which comes every time I send a message. And if I refresh this page here, then we can see that our conversation is saved into this file. And if we go to index.php and we set another convo ID, let's say new chat, then it empties everything out and then we can say here hello to and submit and it works again. And now if we refresh this page, then we get new chat here and we have the old one here as well. So if we want to change the old one, we can change it in the URL and now we get the old chat. So it's not a complete chat application, but I created it with 2 prompts to my GPT Autopilot. So in today's video, let's integrate my ChatGPT API client library, whatever it is. I call it a library, but it's just one class here, so I don't know if it can be called a library. So let's do this. So when I created this, I asked GPT Autopilot to create this message.php file into which we are posting these messages. And it will save the messages into a JSON file. So here we are creating this data array with a role, user, and a message, user message. And then we save it into the conversations/conversation ID. And then in the index.php, we just loop through all of the messages here and print them out. So the first thing we are going to do is I am going to change this message key into content, because that is the way the ChatGPT API works, so I don't have to juggle with 2 different things, message and content. It will be content. And let's see if we have that somewhere else. Okay, that's it. And I will do the same thing in message.php and I will save this file first. And message. So I will change this to content so that it is compatible content with the ChatGPT API format. So now what we have to do is we have to first initialize the ChatGPT API client thingamajig. So we have to require it, and currently it's in ../library/chatgpt.php. And then we have to initialize it with our OpenAI API key. So we will say ChatGPT equals new ChatGPT, and we pass in our API key, which I will get from the environment variable right now. But you can pass it as just a string in place of this. But I have it in the environment, so I will say OpenAI API key. And then what we have to do. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to save this user message to the ChatGPT object. So we will say ChatGPT uMessage, which means user message. And we pass in the user message. Then what we will do is we will replace the thank you message with ChatGPT response content. And that is it. So now if I go back to my chatbot application and I refresh this, it cleared everything out because I changed the message name in the JSON file. So I will in fact delete both of these files. And I will go back here. And I will say hello. And I will submit this. Then now we are actually sending this to ChatGPT and we got a response, hello, how can I assist you today? Now this does not save the context, so I cannot refer to previous messages. But I can just say something like, tell me 5 synonyms for the word amazing. And we submit this. And for some reason it is not working. And today I have had some problems with the ChatGPT API. So let's see if we have some errors here. Yes, we have a server error. So this is not the problem of my library. This is the problem of ChatGPT. It is having some difficulty right now. But we can do something like this. We can say, try to get the message, and we will catch exception E. And if we catch an exception, we will say assistant message equals get message. So at least we get something back, so we know something went wrong. So let's refresh this, and I will say it again. Give me 5 synonyms for the word amazing. And submit. And here we got astounding, incredible, marvelous, breathtaking, and stupendous. So now it works. Now, how do we add context to this? Well, if we go to the documentation of my client/library/class and we scroll down to saving chat history, we have this save function and load function. So what this does is that you give it your own function that you want to use for saving the message. So it will call this save function every time it gets a new message. So then you can save it in whatever way you want. You can save it to a file or to a database or whatever. So in today's video, we are going to use the JSON file just like the chatbot is currently using. So let's go back here and let's create our save function. So what do we have to do? Well, first thing we have to do is we have to pass in the conversation ID to ChatGPT. So let's put here conversation ID. It's the second parameter for the constructor of this class. And we will have to move this up here so we actually have the conversation ID. And then we will do ChatGPT, and let me close that sidebar. ChatGPT save function. And we will add here a function. We can directly add a function here if we want and just put an inline function, but we can also input a string that is the name of a function. So I will call this save messages, or it's one message, save message. And then right now we are saving the message here. So let's copy this code and let's put it inside a function. And we have to define this up here. There's no hoisting when you refer to a function by name like this. So we have to set here function save message. And this will take the message and it will take the chat ID. And this will in fact be standard class. And this will be a string. And what do we have to do here then? Well, this only saves one message, and here we are saving 2 messages. So we can extract just the one message and we can put it here. Let's call it MSG array. And we will set it to this. And the role will be message role. And the content will be message content. Now, I might in fact be able to just cast the class into an array. So let's see what else we have to do. So we have to set the chat ID here because I changed it from conversation ID to chat ID. And here we are JSON decoding the JSON file, but we will not pass the true here because we are using objects, not associative arrays. And then what we can do is remove this array merge and set this to empty otherwise. So we read the file. If the file exists, then we read it. Otherwise, we set the data to an empty array. And then we save the data into the file. But before we do that, we have to add our message to it. So we don't actually have to do this at all because we can just save it directly. So we can say data and we add in there the message. So I might call this messages. And since JSON decode might return null if the file is empty, then I might just do something like this. It will be messages or an empty array. So if this happens to be null, we still set it to an empty array. So that's it. So if I now save this and then I go back to the application, it should work just the same now. So if I refresh this, now if you saw there, these messages flipped around, and that's a bug that the GPT autopilot made. But that should actually be fixed now because we are appending to the end of the JSON, but originally it added to the top. So if I now say hello to and I submit, then we get a message back. And if I refresh this, I still have the messages. So now we are saving it just in a different way. We are saving it with the ChatGPT class. But now we have to load it because we still don't have the context. So we just copy this and we call it a load function. And let's call this function load messages. And let's define it here. Let's say function load messages. And this takes the string of the chat ID and it should return an array. So it returns an array of the message object. So what we are going to do is we are going to do the exact same thing as here. So we are going to read this file, and if it exists, then we are going to get the messages from there, and then we are just going to return the messages or an empty array. So that should be it. So now if we refresh this, and let's actually change this convo ID so we get a new chat here, and let's say hello. And now we got a request error again, which is very convenient. So I'll make a new chat and I will say hello. And now we actually got a message back. So now if I ask something like, how do I calculate the hypotenuse of a triangle? And I submit this, then I get an error again. So if I refresh this and I say, please answer the question, and I submit, I still get an error. So let's try one more time. Can you answer, please? Okay, let's wait for a minute and try again. Okay, I have now waited for a while and let's see. I'm still waiting. Submit. It still doesn't work. Let us change models. We are going to go to ChatGPT and we are going to change to 3.5. And we are going to go back and we will refresh and we will say, are you there? Perhaps the GPT-4 API is currently not available, and it's actually called GPT 3.5 Turbo. And let's see. Hello. Apologies for the delay in response. To calculate the hypotenuse of a right triangle, you can use the Pythagorean theorem, and so on. So already from here you can see that we actually have the context, because I asked the question up here and then I said many other things here, and then it understood that okay, the response was late. So then I can ask, how do you calculate it in JavaScript? Now there's not going to be any code formatting, and I think there's not even going to be any new lines because this just prints the response. So it will be just markdown formatted. Yeah, it's very ugly. But as you can see, we got the response back. So now we have implemented a chat with message history. And it was very simple. Now my library also supports function calling, which is the new feature of the ChatGPT API. So let's create a new convo ID. Let's call it funcs. And let's create some functions. Now what kind of functions should we create? Well, let's start with just the demo that everybody uses. So let's go to our message.php and let's define a function here. Function get current weather. And this takes a location and it will return if location equals California. It will return it's nice and sunny. Else if location equals Alaska, it will return it's cold and windy, and otherwise it will return it's raining. And then we can define this function to be gets the current weather, and we can set that the parameter location, which is a string, has a description of the location for which to get the weather. And then when we have defined this function in this way with the doc block and the function itself, we can then do this. We can say ChatGPT add function, and we will add get current weather. And that's it. Now if we go back here and we say hello, and I say what's the weather like? If I can write and I submit, it will say, sure, could you please let me know the location for which you would like to know the weather? And I will say something like Alaska. And I submit, and it will tell me the current weather in Alaska is cold and windy. And I can say, how about California? And I submit, then it will say, The current weather in California is nice and sunny. It's a great day to enjoy your outdoor activity. And if I say something else, how about London? It will say, the current weather in London is rainy. Don't forget your umbrella if you're heading out. So that is how easy it is to use ChatGPT function calling with PHP if you use my library. So make sure to give it a star on GitHub if you like it. And make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel if this is the kind of content that you like. Now let's try to do something a bit cooler. So how about if we could have a cart where we could add things to the shopping cart, and we could actually have like an updating cart on the page as we type it into ChatGPT. So let me go back to my GPT Autopilot project here, and I should still have it open here. So this is how I created it in the previous video. So I said, create a PHP chatbot application and so on that saves the stuff in the JSON and all this stuff. And then it made the prompt better. So it created this very long prompt about how to do it. And then it created these files and all of this. And then I asked it to move it around because first it put the conversations here, like the actual chat messages here. But then I asked it to move it over here and then add this list of the JSON files here. So how about we do this? Let's click here, yes. Now I hope that there's no errors in the ChatGPT API. But let's say this. Create in a separate folder a shopping cart with OOP. Make also a file that renders the HTML of the shopping cart. You should be able to add products by an arbitrary name and quantity and price to the shopping cart. The shopping cart should calculate the total of the cart and render it in the HTML table of the cart. So let's do this and see if it can actually do this. So we are creating something and we got an error. The server had an error. Damn it. I in fact have to add API error into my project so that it doesn't crash this script. And I will change this to 3.5 because I had problems with the 3.5 before, but the changes that I made recently should have fixed that. So let's actually test it at the same time. Does this work with the 3.5 version? And actually the problem was that I had set my retries to 0. So I'll set it to 5. So then it will try again if there's an error. So let's go back and let's try to improve this thing. So let's start GPT Autopilot again. And we will say yes to this because we want to update the current project. So this is the good thing about my GPT Autopilot. It can actually update an existing project. So I will copy my prompt from here and I will paste it over here and let's see if 3.5 is good. And then it will ask, do you want GPT to make your prompt better? Then let's answer yes. And then it will make a better version, but the API is not working right now. And the reason is that I have the model in here as well, in my better prompt function, I believe. Better prompter. Yeah, so I'm using it here as well. So I'll change this to 3.5 as well. And I probably should make a settings file that changes. So let's try again. Yes, I want to continue and I will copy this again. And let's see if it works. And yeah, make it better. And what now? Oh, again, I wrote it wrong. It is turbo and here as well. All right, let's try this again and hopefully it works. Now we are making the prompt better. And then it says, create a project in a separate folder that implements a shopping cart using object-oriented programming principles. In addition, create a file that generates the HTML representation of the shopping cart. The shopping cart should have the functionality to add products with customizable name, quantity, and price. Furthermore, the shopping cart should be able to calculate the total cost of all items added and displayed in an organized HTML table format. That is good. So let's do this. We are creating a directory shopping cart and a shopping cart project. That's weird. Why did it create an empty shopping cart directory? Now, this is a very interesting feature because when I added this ability to create directories, then now it wants to create directories everywhere. Now hopefully it understands that it has to use sessions. Okay, now it's doing something very weird. It is writing these JSON files here in the shopping cart project. I don't understand why. Now this is actually the first time I'm using GPT 3.5 with this. Well, I tried it before, but with the function calling of GPT 3.5, the response, if you want it to respond with code, is usually wrong. You can't parse the JSON it responds with. But previously I changed it so that we actually send two different prompts. So first we get the function call that we should write to a file, and then when we get that, then we send another response that says, okay, give me the file content. And now I'm getting some error, and we are trying 5 times, and then we are going to stop. Okay, we ran out of tokens because we only have 4,000 tokens in this one. Now they should have the longer one with the 16K, but I haven't actually tried it, and I don't know if I have access to it. But let's check now what we have in the project folder. So we have shopping cart, which has nothing. We have shopping cart project, which has an index with a class product, class shopping cart, and that looks pretty nice. Create a new shopping cart, add product, okay. And PHP, message.php, whoa. It created some conversation. A message class with sender and message, and conversation with participants. That's interesting. Chat history. Okay, that's a pretty cool syntax it's using here. Okay, so do we have the file that prints it? Well, it's actually this one. So let's actually see if we go to shopping cart project. Now this is not in that place. I have to start a server over here, which I have already. It is in 8021. So let's go to 8021 and shopping cart project. And it actually works. It prints out the shopping cart. Okay, so I want to be able to post to this. So let's do this. Let's rename this to code 2, and I will then create a new file here, new directory. Code, and I will copy the shopping cart there. Copy and paste, and then I will run my GPT autopilot again, and I will say, yes, I want to continue. And then what I will say is update the index.php file so that you can post to it a product, and it will add that product to the cart. And if you just get it, it will print the current products in the cart. Use sessions. Let's do this, and I won't make this better. I think that's a good one already. So we read the file, and then we are writing a new version. And let's see. We have session start. We have our product and our shopping cart, and we have if request method is post, then we add a product to the cart, and then we say HTML is cart, generate HTML. Okay, but we are not loading the cart. So let's say that. Please make a method to load the cart from the session. We added something to the constructor. If is set products in the session, then if it's not set, then we initialize it, and otherwise we set it to the products, okay? Did it actually do that? I didn't just see it. Maybe it did that. Okay, perhaps it did that before already. I just didn't realize. So let's see now if I copy this and I put it in here, and then I go here, then there's nothing. But then if I post to it, let's put get for now so I can test it. And name is test, product, price is 20, and quantity is 5. Oops, I put it in the wrong place. In fact, it's already in the code, so I just do that. And I refresh, it doesn't work. Sorry, this has to be if is set get name. Then now if we do this, it still doesn't work. I again changed the wrong file. Where am I? I have too many files here. Paste it here and refresh. Okay, we have test product, quantity 5, price 20. Okay, and we can add another one. test product 2 and 25 and quantity 1. Okay, so now we can add products to the cart. So let's do this. I'll copy this and I will go to my other project, my chatbot project, and I will create a file here called cart.php, and I will paste it in here. And now in our index.php, I can add somewhere in the conversation IDs, down here I will add a div ID cart, and I will add the script down here, cart load, and I will get it from cart.php. And I will make this a function load cart, and I will call it load cart. And if I now go back to this one and I refresh, then I have the cart here. So now what I can do is I can go to my message.php file and I can add a new function. So let's create a new function add to cart. And I will say here that we will have a string product name and an int quantity and a float price. And what will we do when we get here? First of all, we will return added product name to cart. And we will do whatever we do in cart.php. So we will do that, all of this. So we will load the cart. We will set the name to product name and quantity and price. And we don't have to have this. And then we of course need to require this here. So let's do require /cart.php, and it's going to print it, so I have to do something here. I will just say if get print, then we print it. And in the index.php, I will add here print equals true. So now if I refresh, I have this here. And I forgot to add some doc block to my code, but it is actually supposed to be not required. So I can say something like add 5 apples with price 2.5 to the cart. And it will say, sorry, I can't add items to a cart as I am not an e-commerce platform. So we will tell it that you are an e-commerce platform. So first of all, I will go to my message.php and I will add some doc block here. And of course I have to pass this to the freaking AI. So I say adds a product with given name, quantity and price to cart. And we have param. We don't have to set the parameters here because they are self-explanatory. So then we have to give this to ChatGPT. So we add function add to cart. So, and then we have to say ChatGPT S message, which will be the system message. You are a chatbot on a shopping website. You can add products to the cart when asked. And let's go back here and refresh. And could you please try again and submit? And I have added 5 apples with price 2.5 each to your cart. So if I refresh this page, we actually added apples to the cart. So now what we can do is we can go to index and we can load the cart when we get the message. So now we can say, and there's a problem, we got the function here as well. So let me fix that too. So when we save the messages, or in fact when we print the messages, that's the real place. So when we print the messages here, then we will say, how is this written? If chat role in array, if not in array, chat role in the array of assistant or user, then we continue. And if the content is null, if chat content is null, then continue. So if we refresh this now, then now we don't get those function calls because the function calls are saved in the chat history. So now what I can do is I can say add 10 oranges with price 1.5 each to the cart. And I submit, and it should automatically update this when it's done. Hopefully. Yes, it automatically updated. Oranges is now 10 for 1.5 per 1. So that is the power of function calling in the ChatGPT API. So once again, if you want to use this, you can go to my PHP GPT funcs repository. I might rename this and move it to an actual repository for just a library. Because originally I just made this simple chatbot without creating a library. But it's kind of hard to make this. This is what it looks like if you don't use this library. So I wanted to make it easier, so I created the library so you don't have to do curl and all this stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.